All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. Chatting with Clay Fink of 247 Sports. I appreciate you, Clay, for joining me to talk a little Kentucky football today.
Yeah. It's an exciting time for Kentucky football right now, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so on a bye this week, they have obviously a bear of a schedule just anytime you play in the SEC. But I don't know how many people thought that they could kind of duplicate or replicate their performance against Georgia when they would go on the road to Ole Miss. Ole Miss certainly thought of as a more high-flying, high-powered offense. And
Yeah,
coming out of there with a win, I thought Stoops was a little more aggressive
yeah,
in the game, and that's probably what cost him against Georgia. You know, obviously
right.
you would have to execute even if he was aggressive, but maybe what cost him against Georgia, but also maybe what won the game against Ole Miss.
Yeah,
The mood there has to be pretty high flying after
yeah,
the Ole Miss game.
yeah. So I think on the aggressive decision, he went on a radio show and was asked, like, did the results of the Georgia game kind of play into your decision? And he pretty much said there were different decisions, down three versus down four, so and so. You need a touchdown anyways. And I think there's some legitimacy. Like, I do think actually it makes more. It was less of a. It was less up for debate, the decision against Ole Miss. In the moment, it was aggressive, but it's like you needed a touchdown regardless. So that's his reasoning, and I think that's a legitimate reasoning. But I can't help but think that you got 12 games, you lose one in such disappointing fashion, and that's the play that everybody's coming back to is the decision to punt it against Georgia. You can't make that mistake twice. You only have so many plays you can impact as a head coach in any given game, directly impact, and decisions like that are some of them. So yeah, it's a big time win. It's a big time win, and I don't think they would have won it if he had punted there. And it worked out. I mean, 4th and 7. That's a historic play that'll be remembered for Kentucky fans. The deep bomb to Barry on Brown.
The Kentucky season and this Kentucky team seems to be one of the more perplexing ones in the country. Lose badly to
Yeah.
USC, nearly beat Georgia, and I don't think anybody would have been surprised if like that was Kentucky's only like real big shot, right? Like
Right.
you almost lose to Georgia, and then Ole Miss just comes in and beats you like they're supposed to,
Right.
or you go on the road and get beat kind of like
Right.
you're supposed to. I don't think anybody would have batted an eye if Ole Miss would have won this game by 14, right? Like I think if people would
Right.
have said like, yeah, Ole Miss is a good team. We played them close, we played them tough, we didn't give up. That said, back and forth, back and forth. Now on a bye this week, does Vandy? Oh, I mean, Vandy's playing better than I think people even realize. Like, does Vandy almost worry you for like the other swing back side? I mean, I think it's good for Kentucky to have the bye week,
Yeah.
to not be
Definitely.
reading their press clippings for 7 days. But the thoughts around just that Vandy game coming up in 10 days from now?
Yeah. So kind of the vibe, the up and down nature of Kentucky has kind of been a thing for the last 3 or 4 years, I would say. I mean, um, there's been years they've played Georgia very close. So there's been a few graphics about how close Kentucky's played Georgia over the last few years. And when Vandy went on a 2-game SEC win streak against Kentucky and Florida 2 years ago, that was a week after Kentucky lost to Georgia by like 8 points.
Hmm.
So they've always been a little bit of an up and down team. And that was Vanderbilt. That was a worse Vanderbilt team that they went and lost to after that Georgia game. I definitely am nervous. Like I'm definitely having this is like a scrappy Vanderbilt team. They have a lot of like physical defenders. Like I don't think their defense is like elite level or anything like Kentucky's is, but yeah, I'm definitely worried about this game. They seem to be well coached.
So if you look at the next 4 games that they have, Vandy at home, at UF, which
Yeah,
they seem to be kind of a tough team to figure out too. We'll see what they look like
yeah,
against UCF this week. But a team that's just not very good, and Kentucky certainly had their number. The Swamp can sometimes
yeah,
be a tough place to play, though. Auburn, who if you just wait for them to give you the game, they usually
yeah.
will. Ask Cal in Oklahoma, and then Murray State. Like Kentucky fans, I think would be upset with any of those losses. Maybe they could
Right.
understand one against Florida on the road, but I don't think they'd be very thrilled with any of those losses. I mean, that puts them in a fairly decent spot. I mean, you're looking at 7-2 after starting 1-2, right? Like that'd be
Right.
winning 6 straight games, and you got to go out and take care of business, right? Like I'm
Right.
not saying that you know
It's no
shouldn't
guarantee.
drop
Yeah.
anything. But
Right.
a couple of
You'll
really
be
tough ones,
favored.
Tennessee and Texas. And man, if
Yeah.
you could beat UL at home, you're looking at what might be an 8-4 season. If you can get an upset, you could certainly see even better. But there's probably a little more optimism for this season right now than maybe existed before the season started.
Right. So before the season started, it was kind of the view of all the writers covering Kentucky that the South Carolina game would kind of define the season. One, with it being their SEC opener. They've lost 2 consecutive games to South Carolina, and that's sort of been like a program defining thing for Shane Beamer, which has really frustrated Stoops, I know. Um, so they really wanted to win that. And also, it was kind of the only like swing game, if things were going right with the program, you can kind of assume that they're going to win out in this upcoming stretch here. But you could also assume that they're still going to lose to Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, and Tennessee. So they lost the South Carolina game, and that obviously puts them behind. You barely lose the Georgia game, but this, like, you're back. Like preseason predictions, you everyone would have predicted Kentucky to be 3-2 right now with wins against who they play week one, MAC team week one, um,
Southern Miss,
Southern Miss. That's who it was. Oh
Ohio,
yeah,
and South
Tate
Carolina. Yeah.
Rodemaker. Yeah, so Ohio, South Carolina, those would have been assumed to be the 3 wins, but now you have an Ole Miss win. So I just they seem to have responded from that. I mean, the offense just looked abysmal. Basically, it was FSU and UK at the bottom of every Power Four statistic after 3 weeks after the Georgia loss. And they had a really strong day last week against Ohio, but I had my doubts. I knew that Ohio was pretty efficient on defense this year, but they really looked really. It was a new offense against Ole Miss. There was a lot of stuff that I haven't seen all in the year. And Dane Key, their receiver, he might be working his way into a real like day 2 NFL draft guy. That guy, I think he has 250 yards in 2 weeks right now.
Yeah.
So
And I think what's maybe a little underrated about really Kentucky's performance is, man, they were a couple of plays away from this thing, not even really being close. Like
yeah,
Brock missed a couple of guys like right down the goal line, like for like walk-in touchdowns, down
yeah,
around the 5 or so.
yeah,
And the score could have been like Kentucky by a lot. Like Ole
right,
Miss was lucky to have a shot to kick a field goal
right.
late. What have your overall thoughts of Vandergrift been? Like preseason, he was ranked pretty low
Yeah,
in the SEC, like quarterback hierarchy, and in fact,
right.
like really just like Mississippi State and Vandy's guys behind him. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on Brock Ben and kind of where do you think his ceiling is throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean the ceiling is he was a 5-star for a reason. It does flash. You see some of the arm talent. He's really an impressive athlete. We have Gavin Wims as our other quarterback, who's very experienced, has like 20 starts under his belt at Rutgers. And they've rotated him in for a rushing threat, and I don't think that's necessary moving forward. Brock really showed his upside as a runner against Ole Miss. Um, and he looked a lot more comfortable in the pocket. He looked a lot more decisive getting through his reads. He looked a lot more comfortable throwing the ball away when he was under pressure, knowing when he should tuck it and run. And I mean, I kind of just, I kind of wonder if he just sort of had jitters. Like, I mean, this dude has played 3 years of college football, but he's never started a game. He's never played anything other than like cleanup duty at Georgia. So yeah, I maybe he regresses down a little bit after these last 2 weeks. I mean, he was legitimately the worst quarterback in the Power Five through 3 weeks, I think. But he's looked impressive. So that touchdown throw in the back of the end zone was really nice against Ole Miss. He looks athletic. I think he has a pretty high ceiling, and he has another year of eligibility. So UK has a freshman that they like a lot right now. But if you can get Brock back for another year, that'd be great.
They certainly I mean, I've played just phenomenal defense to hold Georgia to what they did, to really hold Ole Miss down too. And they feel old school, and I mean that's probably a testament to Scoops, but they feel old school that they do want to run the ball well, and they do want to play defense, and they do want to control. The time possession in the Ole Miss game was stupid. Like
Yeah,
it was just absolutely
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
You looking at the end of the first half, like what
It was
is going on
crazy.
here?
It was crazy.
But they just do. They feel like an old school, like in this day and age of like, and you're you're going to take on the personality of your coach, and that's how Stoops is. But like in this day of like air it out and throw the ball a billion times, like I was in Tuscaloosa, and I think Millville
Right.
threw the ball like 7 times before they ran it once, and so like that's just kind of unheard of, right? Like
Yeah.
for Kentucky to be a ground and pound, run and play defense and keep the ball away from you. It's I don't know how do Kentucky fans like that? Like, is that exciting for them, or it's just like win and we don't care?
That's yeah, that I mean, I think it's probably a little bit refreshing, to be honest. The 2018, 2019, 2020 teams at Kentucky that were so successful, that was kind of their DNA. The 2018 team really wasn't good passing the ball. That was the first 10-win team in like 50 years at UK. And they had like a top 3 defense in the country, and they had Benny Snell running the ball behind this great offensive line. So the UK fans, they can appreciate a strong run game, strong defense. And then the last couple of years, they've really emphasized the pass, and they've had the talent at the quarterback position. They're very talented at the wide receiver position, even still, but just really hasn't quite had the success outside of that first year with Will Levis. So I think UK fans will kind of just take what they can get at this point. It's been a bit of a rotating wheel at offensive coordinator the last couple of years. They've had well, Liam Cohen has had 2 different stints as offensive coordinator at Kentucky. They had 2 other guys in the last 4 years. So I think they're just looking for stability, UK fans. And yeah, it's this team wasn't really expected to be a running team coming into the year. They're still missing their RB1, Chip Trainum, who transferred in from Ohio State. He was rumored to be available for Ole Miss, and now there's rumors that he might be out for the year. So we'll see what the deal is with that. But Demi Sumo Karnbe, who transferred in last year, has been really impressive. They've got 2 underclassmen backs who've been really impressive, and the O line has been good enough in the run game. So that's an improvement from last year.
It feels like I didn't have this on the notes, but it does feel like if there's a swing game left, right? Like it's probably that game in the Swamp, right? Like, and
Yeah,
I know that Kentucky at this point like would think, we need to go in there and win that.
right.
But that is a tough place to play, and Florida's
Yeah,
offense at times has looked pretty good, and I do think that
yeah.
their defense is pretty atrocious, and so Kentucky should be able to run the ball fairly well. But not to look too far ahead, but you and I aren't playing against Vandy, so that's not our really worry.
Uh,
But thoughts on just kind of early thoughts on that UF game?
yeah, I would definitely agree on that being like the swing game going forward. I think a team like Auburn, that's so poor offensively and has some more talent on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, UK is the opposite, right? So UK is, I think their defense is gonna probably give whoever's at quarterback for Auburn a really, really hard time. I don't. Mertz has had some moments. I don't necessarily think it'll be quite as dominant against Florida. And this offense has looked strong for 2 weeks now, but who knows what it'll look like by then. Yeah, I think Kentucky will win that game, and I don't think they're going to be overly phased by the away environment. Although Florida's definitely a tougher place to play than Ole Miss. I, they've won there recently. A lot of these guys on this team have been on teams that have won in Gainesville. I still think they'll win it, but I think it could definitely be closer than we expect. That's a pivotal one. I mean, that was an embarrassing loss for them last year, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys returning from that team. Obviously, assuming Billy is still there, that was really rough for him and his staff. So they're gonna be motivated for that one at home, and I do think it could be a lot closer than we expect.
So I want to ask you this and kind of go off topic or off subject, but what is the worry level that Stoops, if he continues to put together good seasons, and let's say they get to let's say they win the games they're supposed to, and then they beat Louisville at the end of the year, and they finish with 9 wins, and then maybe depending on when it would happen, a tenth at a bowl or something like that. What is the worry of Stoops getting poached for a bigger job? Like what like people throw rumors out or ideas out of like, oh, he could be here, there, wherever. But like, what is the worry around that, or how like entrenched do you think he really is at Kentucky?
I I I'm very torn on the subject because I really thought that if he was going to leave, it would have been last year. Just the way that they won the Louisville game, he could kind of go out on a positive note, but it was a very underwhelming year. and he, obviously things fell through. I don't think it was really his choice. I think it was more so Texas A&M moved on from him was the final verdict. And yeah, I mean, if you beat Ole Miss, that's gonna draw some attention from other schools, and there's gonna be openings. There always are. I, yeah, I mean, I think you have to be worried about it as long as the team doesn't, crash and burn over the rest of the year. I don't. I mean, he's got two 10-win seasons at Kentucky. So it just another solid year this year. Would definitely have him on the radar of some teams. I would say it's certainly something to worry about, and that's I had Kentucky fans dismiss that Stoops isn't capable of taking Kentucky to the next level. I think that would set the program back very very far if you lose Stoops. Recruiting is the best it's ever been in school history right now. He's got a great staff for recruiting around him. He's really mastered, like he's gotten that figured out, and it's the best it's ever been. They're the most talented team they've ever been. It's the program is in a good place right now, but I don't know if he has as much reason to be tied to the program anymore. I mean, he's one of the 5 or 6 longest tenured coaches in the country
Yeah,
within the
it's been there
school.
for a while.
Yeah, so it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me with a strong end to the season.
He's been there longer than the average coach is anywhere, right? Like, what coach is
Yeah,
there like
I
three
mean,
or
it's
four
like
years?
12,
Yeah,
11, 12 years.
he's been there for a long time.
Yeah,
So, Clay, I appreciate you for hanging out, man, and talking a little Kentucky football. Obviously, some big ones coming up, and we'll get you back the Florida week. And I know that
yeah,
Kentucky's got a lot going on this year with some big time matchups and some big time teams they'll play with
definitely.
Tennessee and Georgia down the, or I'm sorry, Tennessee and Texas down the stretch. So, man, I appreciate you. Where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your work?
Yeah, you can follow me at Clay_Fink on Twitter or X. I don't know. And then you can read some of my articles over at Knowles 24/7, writing about Florida State. But if that's something you want to check out, you can go find that there.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you a ton for hanging out, man.
Yeah,